Hey everyone, this is Triple A Fantasy. We have a special edition Scott Fish Bowl 13 mock draft tonight, so stay tuned. It's going to be a fun show. All right, everyone. Like I said, this is Triple A Fantasy. I am your host, Zach, at FF Triple Batman. You will see we have a lot of people on screen today. We are doing a mock draft for Scott Fish Bowl. If you don't know what I'm talking about, we appreciate you still watching. But hopefully, you know what we're talking about, but we can still help you, even if you are not in the Scott Fish Bowl. So I wanted to introduce everybody here first, and then we will get into what the Scott Fish Bowl is real quick before we start a mock. So I'm going to go in order of draft picks. So as I say your name, if you can let everyone know where you're drafting this year. If it's a live draft, let us know, and then we'll keep it going. So at the 101, we got Steven Johnson at Steven_Roto. He is with the SFB Avi Makers. So where are you drafted, Steven?
I am in the Chicago Live, hosting the Chicago Live this year on July 16th. So we're the late bloomers to the group. So looking forward to it, though.
Awesome. You get all that fun ADP to look at.
Yeah. Last year we went before the slow mocks or the slow draft started, and man, it was a disaster. So all the way up this year. Just no lower I could have gone with the way that my team turned out. So very much looking forward to 2023.
There we go. At the 102, we got David Mendelson at DMendy02. He is the one of the co-founders of Triple Play Fantasy. We're on the platform right now. He's also with the 33rd team and Fantasy Pros. So where are you drafting at, David?
I'm at the 104 this year.
Oh, and, that's right. I moved you.
Yeah, that's all good. That's all. It's different experience, different spots. But yeah, I'm excited, man. This is my third year doing Scott Fish Bowl. It gets better and better every year. Just the quality, the people are amazing. Everything about it is awesome. I'm glad the season's finally here.
Awesome. And then at the 103, we have Joe Pepe. He will not be on the show tonight. At JPEP20, he's also with Triple A Fantasy, Fantasy Pros, and FF Face Off. And then at 104, we got Mike Fiella, and I almost said it wrong. Thank you, Ryan. But you can find him at Daddy's Home FF. He's with DLF and Trophy Smack. So where are you at for this year's draft, Mike?
I am the 104 in the Boston live draft. So we'll be drafting on Lansdowne Street, right behind Fenway on July 15th. So right before Steven's draft.
Awesome. At the 105, we got Doc Mendelson, brother of David, if you couldn't figure that out. He's at Triple A Fantasy, and he's also part of Triple Play Fantasy. So where are you at, Doc?
I'm at the 105, but going to finish at the 101.
There you go.
Where are you drafting? Which division?
I'm in the Ben's Chili Bowl division, drafting at Sud House in D.C.
Awesome. Another live draft. And then at the 106, we got Kevin Tompkins at K Tompkins II with Fantasy Alarm. How's it going tonight, Kevin?
Going great. I am drafting at the 106 in the Minneapolis Live, so I will look forward to the second year of Ian Fish absolutely roasting some of my wide receiver picks this year. He did it last year with Gabe Davis, and he was right. So,
you have to let us know who he roasts the most so we can pay attention to those.
You will get up to the minute. I will tweet it out. You'll get up to the minute updates.
Perfect. At the 107, she's not on the screen tonight, but she will be drafting is Casey Kasem at the Casey Kasem, and she is the host of Get Real with Casey Kasem podcast. And then we have at the 108, Dan Lamagna at FF Coach Dan with Dynasty Theory Fantasy Football podcast and DLF. So where are you drafting from, Dan?
108, man, tonight, 104 next Sunday from Xfinity Live in Philly. I actually just got back from a trip watching my Phillies. Unfortunately, they didn't win the series versus the Nationals, but a little Philly warm-up, man. We're going to get some Geno steaks and have a good time.
Awesome. At the 109, not on screen, we have Sam Wagman at Sam Wagman 95. He's with the Game Day Football Guys and High Floor Football. And at the 110, we have Seth Woolock, not on screen, at between_Seth FF. He's with In Between Media and Betting Pros. And at the 111, Ryan Weiss, you are on screen at the Fantasy 5. You're with Football Guys as well as Club Fantasy FFL. So where are you drafting from, Ryan?
So I also got my spot on at the 111, and I will be at the New York City live draft at Tito Murphy's on the 15th, so same time as Boston. And I'm in the Sbarro division, which I thought was hilarious because that's the last pizza place I would ever eat when I was in New York City. But
If you want a true New York slice,
gotta go get me a New York
got the
slice.
gear though.
That's your name's Michael Scott.
Exactly.
And then at 112, we have Brad, not on screen, Sir Brad Lee K on Twitter, and he's with Triple Play Fantasy and Fantrax. So that is everybody. We got a lot. If you guys notice, I grabbed a lot of people that are in the live drafts. I wanted to kind of promote that, have a lot of fun with all of that. And then right before we get started, actually, I'm going to start the draft just so you guys can get going. And then I will explain what's going on for the listeners of what we're doing, and then we'll kind of recap some picks. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the start button.
Steven, the pressure's on you, by the way. If you don't like your pick at the
gosh.
101, then it's just going to set the tone.
Yeah, it is a 30-second clock, so we are moving quick, but if I need to change anything, I can, but we're just going to have fun with it. So let me just go through some league setup real quick. So this is Scott Fishbowl 13. We are mock drafting 15 rounds. The real thing will be 22 rounds. It's a snake style with a third round reversal. If you've never played third round reversal, basically the third round mimics the second round, and then we continue with the snake. It's a good way to balance out, especially in a super flex league, that 101 pick not getting 3 top 25 picks. The Scott Fishbowl is going to be 3,300 teams this year. Last year's 3,000. We're up another 300, so it's amazing. 275 divisions, 12 teams each. You can start 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, and then and a kicker if you're in sleeper, and then you don't have to start a kicker in MFL. Nope. Yep, MFL. And then we also have 4 flex spots, one of them being a super flex. There's 11 bench spots. You don't trade. And waivers are $100 blind bidding. Wow. And there is a weekly game against the median. So you can go 2-0, 0-2, or 1-1. All right. So let's recap some picks real quick, and then I will go over the scoring. So far it looks pretty chalk to me for most of it. So I do want to mention real quick for Mike, he took Travis Kelce at 104. Some people might think that's crazy, except for this is a crazy tight end premium league. So that scoring means basically every catch that's a first down is 4 points, not counting the yardage because we get a PPR plus a bonus for that, and then a first down bonus as well, plus a tight end bonus. So, Mike, are you going Kelce? You're not going to let Kelce go past you at 104 if he's there?
No, I took 104 because there's a top 4 in this draft, and it's the 4 that you see in front of you. Not going to tell you if that's the order I would take them in, but that is the 4 for me. I don't expect, based on who my league mates are, to have a choice, which I like. It takes a lot of the pressure off of me, but those are the only 4 players I'm considering at my pick. Plain and simple. There's not a 5th option for me at all.
All right. How do I get there we go. All right, cool. No, that makes total sense. So the scoring is pretty standard, I would say, for most scoring until we get some of these bonuses. So we have 6-point passing touchdown. And then it is 1 point for every 25 yards, 0.04 passing decimal scoring, 2-point conversion. We got rushing, all touchdowns 6 points, all yardage are 0.1 for rushing, receiving. Where against this just interesting is we have a 0.25 points per carry, and as well as a 1 point per first down for all rushing, receiving, tight ends. Then the kicker, not talking about kicking with tight ends, is that extra tight end bonus of that point per first down, point per reception. And then speaking of kickers, it gets even crazier where they get 3.3 points for an extra made field goal, extra point, as well as then decimal scoring for the yardage for a field goal. So 37-yarder, 3.7 points. So kickers probably will matter this year. So I'm sorry for those if you guys are in leagues where you don't think kickers matter.
Kickers' lives matter.
Yeah. So looking through, I wanted to call out Steven real quick because of the third round reversal. So how does that make you approach your second round pick? You started with Mahomes, you took TJ Hawkinson. Now you have to wait another 12 picks. What were you going through there?
Yeah, it's I feel like I've done about 300 mock drafts to this point in time, and I still have no idea what I'm doing in 2 weeks. Essentially, what it comes down to is just getting one of those top 3 quarterbacks, just seeing what types of builds there are there. And then beyond that, if one of the top 3 tight ends like this, in my opinion, falls back to me, then grabbing one of them. If not, going for a running back with the carry point upside. If we can find one of the workhorses there, I did pass on one that I've found myself taking at the 212 quite often, but in some shape or form, again, waiting off on wide receiver and then focusing solely on quarterback, tight end, running back in those first 2 picks, just depending on best player available on the board.
All right. And I wanted to call out Ryan real quick, one, because Kevin, I'm assuming, is the one who's on the Devry Royale channel right now, saying he's just here to troll you. Thank you, Kevin, for watching.
Always. Exactly. Yep. That's why you bring me to the shows, because you know the trolls are going to come
Yeah.
and get the extra clicks.
I assume it's Kevin just because he's always on your Mock It Like It's Hot on Mondays.
Exactly.
With,
We have
Club
fun.
Fantasy. Yep. So I noticed you went double wide receiver, and then you even followed up with a running back. So we're going 0 QB for you here. How does that feel in a super flex league?
So this is the joy of mock drafting, because I don't know if this is what I plan on doing. It's certainly not my go-to when it comes to super flex. And I'll be honest, Justin Fields, I think there is a break point where I probably should have taken Justin Fields there, but I want to see what I wanted to see is where the quarterbacks are going to fall. One thing I'm learning is the ADP for Scott Fish right now. I've done a few of these mocks is all over the place. And so I tend to see a quarterback I don't hate there at 410. And I don't think I'm going to. Geno Smith is the one I kind of always have hope for. And man, did he go much earlier this time. So I'm not loving my chances of what's going to fall back to me. I did one the other day where I ended up with Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. I don't necessarily hate that. Like, go out here, let's have fun with these rookie quarterbacks. So
Absolutely. And someone who went 2 QBs but got a great stack, Dan, how fast did you pick Mark Andrews there after starting with Lamar Jackson?
That was a little bit of the method of my madness with taking Lamar where I did at 1-8. I thought Herbert was a great pick after, a couple other quarterbacks that went, but I knew there was that chance of getting that stack with Andrews with his tight end premium, and it kind of just fell on my lap there. So that worked out as planned, and then I'm just a big super flex guy. So 2 quarterbacks. I'm really high on Seattle's offense this year with Geno, and I'm going to go for another stack here and get Metcalf. So 2 stacks. I'm pumped to start. I know I won't have this luck probably next weekend.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, never the real thing. And then I want to go to Doc. I saw you pick Burrow first before Lamar. I would probably say Burrow may be considered the safer QB, but Lamar with that rushing upside and that 0.25 per carry. Were there any thoughts of going Lamar, or were you straight Burrow?
No, man, I think Burrow has the better weapons. Lamar's been hurt the last couple of years. We don't know what we're going to get with him now in terms of rushing upside. Now that he's gotten paid, we'll probably want to protect his body. This might be the only time I get Bijan. I can't believe he fell to me there. My team's looking great.
Yeah, we will see how it shakes out. You don't have a receiver yet, which is okay in this league. Speaking of receivers, Kevin, you went with Justin Jefferson, the first wide receiver off the board at 106. Great wide receiver. You even got Deshaun Watson as your first QB, which we're hoping he's got a good bounce up back this year. It could be great. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown seems like a steal in this draft. And then you went running back. Was that
you guys made me take a running back?
Yeah. I almost thought that was like an auto pick for a second. Is this the earliest?
Yeah, I have Tony Pollard as my RB4
Okay.
overall. I just think in this format with full PPR, and then you're adding in the rushing, and I'm going to take I wanted to take Amari Cooper, but Devonta Smith is hanging around, so I can't pass on him. But yeah, Tony Pollard is, to be able to see how many running backs went off the board before him, 8. So, I mean, that was a steal for me there, and to be able to correlate that with Amon-Ra St. Brown, I am playing some week 17 stuff here, so little DFS slant in there if I do play like I'm right. So, hopefully if I get to the last week, Detroit, Dallas can get it done for me.
Well, that makes sense. Now, is this the earliest you've ever taken a running back in your life? In
my life, no. This is the first. I've only done 2 mocks. I waited till the 9th round in one of the other ones I did on stream, but yeah, this is the first in a while. At least I think since like the second Scott Fishbowl I did, which I think was 10. I think I took a couple running backs early.
Now, last year, did you end up being the last one to take a running back in the whole thing?
I was on the leaderboard for a while. I was there. I think I took my first running back in the 12th, I want to say. And it was Ronald Jones, but at least I got Rashad White after that, which kind of helped mitigate that. But yeah, probably a little more emphasis this year on the running back. So I like feel like I've grown as a person a little bit, and I will take a running back if the value's there.
Perfect. Now, is anybody in this draft? This is for anybody. Are you guys feeling like you're trying to avoid receiver a little bit with the new scoring, or are you guys still all receiver? Because it feels like in every league but Scott Fishbowl, I mean, it's receiver crazy, especially like on Underdog and stuff like that right now.
I wouldn't say
I'm fading wide receiver 100%. I mean, points wise, chase the points, don't chase the points per game. And honestly, the way that the spectrum stretches for wide receiver in this scoring, I think you can wait on it. Just for how many folks hit wide receiver one games versus say, the group of tight ends, obviously very top heavy. Same thing with the quarterbacks and same thing with the running backs. Wide receivers tends to stretch out. So if you can wait a little bit, all the power to you. I have to sign off. Feel free to roast me. Don't care. I'll be drafting from my phone the rest of the way. Have a good night, gentlemen.
Thanks, Steven.
I did want to just counter that a little bit. I think we are discounting how top heavy wide receiver can be as well. And I think we're seeing it with guys, specifically Devontae Adams is a guy who tends to fall in these mock drafts, but he scored a lot of points even by this year's scoring last year. So I think there's going to be an interesting thing where if you're able to take the value as it falls to you and get a bunch of these, very good wide receivers late, I think it's going to work out really well for some people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. With the wide receivers though, like that line of demarcation is like after T Higgins, it seems like DK Metcalf is like in his own kind of tier. And then you get to the Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, Christian Watson. So like I took 3 of those wide receivers before like that mini kind of tier break. So, after that, all those wide receivers like McLaurin, Ridley, they all have warts, like bigger warts than we've seen in that range compared to previous years.
And that's where I think the argument is to get them early. Now, again, it makes sense, especially with the points per carry essentially bumping the running backs up. But wide receivers do have warts, and there is a lot of, diversity where there's going to be a lot of guys having different wide receiver one games, but specifically looking at my team, I know Jamar Chase and Cooper Kupp are probably top 5 wide receivers on a weekly basis, and they're going to score hopefully with Kelsey, but I doubt it. But at least some of these running backs, and then I'm hoping to find the value at running back later on with guys who maybe, because I feel like we're still going to lend ourselves towards pass catchers, but those guys who get the short yardage first downs, I think are going to work out really well for some people later in the draft too. Specifically people like Kevin who want to wait on running back. There's going to be those first down machines later on. So.
I also think there's a way of just playing the board, getting the best available, because people that fall to you, for me at 105, I definitely want to take a QB. But after that, I'm kind of available the best player, whether that's a QB in the second round. Bijan is the first time I've seen him fall to me at this. Chubb on the way back, like it just fell where I didn't need to take a wide receiver. And now I'm getting, McLaurin and JSN with my 6-7. And David's going to auto draft.
No, I'm not.
Now, as everyone here, you guys have all been in Scott Fishbowl for at least 1 year. This is not your first year, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. So, I think we've all learned through this. I think mocking is a lot of fun, and it's great to be able to like do it with people and all that fun stuff. But have you guys ever seen your real draft come anything close to a mock draft you've ever done?
Never.
No.
So, so for those of you that are watching, we really appreciate it, and you can learn from mock drafts. But just remember, as you might be trying out a strategy, everybody else in your mock draft also could be trying out a strategy that they won't actually do in the real draft. So it's a great way to learn kind of where a general player will fall. But this is more so you practice, hey, if I start with a double QB build, what's that kind of feel like? If I start like Mike going tight end early, what does that feel like? If I avoid a position completely, how do I feel about my team? But definitely don't think, for example, like Dan getting to double stack his first 4 picks. I highly doubt that will actually happen in the real draft with Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews.
You actually
Yeah.
had a really good point. Go ahead, Dan.
Well, I was just gonna say it's kind of like you were mentioning, Zach. Like, I'll kind of know who my first pick's gonna be, but then the rest of the draft, I just like to see who falls in that range and have 3 or 4 guys every round from all the mocks that I can put together, just so I'm not scrambling at the end. So like maybe I have a plan in place, and 2 of the guys I thought would be there are gone, but I have 2 other guys in my back pocket I can use. But I genuinely do have a build that I want to go into, and that's using all these mocks to test out the builds and being like, man, the wide receivers in round 10 I really like. So I'm going to make sure that I draft, I might get a running back sooner than that. So I might wait to push like my 3rd wide receiver down a couple rounds, or, whatever the case may be. Or, there's a tight end like maybe Chigo Okonkwo, who I'm okay with him being my starter. So I'll wait to draft my tight end a little bit later. So it's like certain things like that you can kind of take from these mock drafts to figure out how exactly you do want to build your team, obviously with the wrinkles that might come with the real draft.
Awesome. Ryan, you had something?
Give me 1 second to make this pick.
No, sorry.
No, you're fine. Well, what I was going to say was you brought up, the mocks being different, but the composition of your draft is going to be different. There are no Scott Fishbowl leagues with 12 fantasy analysts. So like everybody's kind of tinkering and trying to decide what they want to do. But the beauty of Scott Fishbowl is you play, at least a while ago, it used to be like 8 and 4, 8 analysts, 4 fans. With these live drafts, we don't even get that kind of mix. I'm relatively sure there are only 2 analysts in my entire Sbarro division. And then it's 10 fans, which is awesome. It might not be quite that bad, but it's something along those lines, to where they're the wild card, because fans, first of all, we're in New York City. Are we dealing with a bunch of Giants fans, a bunch of Jets fans, a bunch of Bills fans? We don't know any of these things. So you could see players going wildly different from ADP. And that's where taking the value as it falls to you is very important. If you go into a round knowing you need to go wide receiver and then Bijan Robinson falls to you, you got to make that pick and that pivot. So
I do think that's something we don't talk about, how we let bias play into fantasy football, whether that be a team preference, whether it be somebody that did really well for you, that maybe made you money or has done well for you in years past that you're willing to overdraft.
With the fans, yeah, for sure.
And I will say,
David, you're going to be the only. You might set the lowest pick on Greg Dortch.
Probably, yeah.
There will be no Greg Dortch slander on these airwaves.
Oh, absolutely not.
He'll be kicked out otherwise.
I do find it interesting, though, that now having the lowest pick on a guy is kind of like this badge of honor in our industry, because it used to be like, I want to get this guy at the best value possible. But you're like, if I can see my name in lights as the first dude to take Greg Dortch, I'm doing it, baby.
I had it for Gesicki last year. How'd that turn out?
Yeah, there you go.
It was Gesicki.
Yeah, it was terrible.
But
but maybe this is a year.
Yeah, I don't mind to throw it out there, because hopefully no one from my division is watching. But like David Montgomery is a guy who I want to walk out with. I feel like he's such an insane value right now. But like it's that debate of how long do I let it go, because I don't want to be the last one to take him and not end up with him. And so he's someone where I love seeing where he's fallen to me in these 8th rounds. But like I don't know how that's going to play in a live draft situation.
Yep. And you brought up live draft. So I'm in the Orlando Live. It is 36 people total. We have 3 divisions. It is 18 analysts, 18 quote unquote fans, which is great. But my division is 8 analysts, 4 fans. So that's going to be a little different. Whereas
that's how it was when I first got into Scott Fish 4 or 5 years ago, is most divisions were 8 and 4. So.
Yeah. So usually it was like 2/3 analysts, 1/3 fans. And then it's completely changed, which is great as we add more people. But I would say almost all of us are live drafting. A live draft is also very different than the slow draft. Now, we only live draft 10 rounds, so we still get 12 rounds of the slow draft. But it's very different when you only have a couple minutes to make a pick and people are going to make fun of you or give you a hard time or have fun with it, than you getting to stare at your phone or your computer for up to 8 hours as you decide on your pick and looking at, as someone mentioned earlier, like week 17 correlations and fun stuff like that. Like you have to know that going into your live draft. You can't be doing that research on the fly, or someone is going to give you a hard time for how slow you're being.
Yeah.
It's good practice on the sleeper platform here too. I have a few sleeper leagues, but I'm mostly MFL. So it's getting some good practice here tonight.
I love that. That's such a good point that I like to bring up, is mock draft on the platform that you're going to be playing on, because it's great that we can all quote ADP and things along those lines, but that changes from site to site, and so do projections, to where really what matters is what the platform you're playing on is telling people. I think that's one of the larger influences that people sometimes ignore, is the site you're playing on can control ADP far more than any fantasy expert.
Yep.
So.
And for those of you who've played on MFL before, and back in the day, all we had was MFL for Scott Fish. Did you guys ever input like your own rankings into there, so you didn't have to use their standard ADP rankings?
I never did that.
I just found out from you this very moment that I
Yeah.
would do that.
Because I found that, so my first Scott Fishbowl 10, like the ADP was insane on that list. Like you could like the rookies are really driven up higher, and with the scoring, it's all over the place. And you could tell people were not comfortable with it, and we're just like, oh well, ADP says to draft this guy, and they were just letting guys way better fall. So I found there's a way where you can on MFL. I don't think you can do it on Sleeper, but maybe you can. You can import your own rankings or however you want to see that ADP, and then you have it how you would project them out or whatever. And that's such an easier way to draft, and you'll get a lot of steals that way because you'll see people completely missing on guys because they're not on the screen.
Love that.
So fun tip for those on MFL out there.
and I am on MFL yet again. So.
Oh yeah, no.
I'm
the host of Orlando. We're all
Mike. Good pick. I'm usually the one that gets a kicker first.
All right, so Mike, since you were the first kicker, let's talk about it. We are in the I can't even see my screen. We are in the 11th round. So this would, I mean, we're on Sleeper. You have to start one kicker on Sleeper. On MFL, you don't have to. You can even start 4 kickers on MFL. I don't recommend 4, but because you're missing out on a quarterback, but you can. So what made you want to take a kicker first in the 11th round?
I mean, I'm just looking for a positional advantage, and we're getting to the point now when you look at who's left on the board that you're getting these glut of players, maybe could be, possibly could be, and at this point, I'm looking to win a major tournament. I'm not looking to be pretty. I'm not looking to make Twitter happy.
You are pretty though.
I am. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for noticing. But that's where when you look at taking Kelsey early and you look at Tucker. Really what you're getting is points over your opponent. I mean, that's what you're gaining. And I'm looking at the delta between the players on the board rather than the total points scored, knowing that I'm going to get 95% of whoever is left on the board. Juju, who I was looking at, for example, I can get 95% of them with 4 of the other players that are going to come back to me next round. So it's an easy choice to just make that positional differential and grab that player that gives you that guaranteed start every week and that you're going to beat your opponents with.
That makes sense. And then, Doc, did you pick McPherson because you have Burrow, so you can kind of get any kind of time they score, or did that
exactly?
not go
They're probably going to be a high scoring offense. Money Mac.
All right. I was trying to see if Steven had taken Josh Allen first. He took Mahomes. He was like, oh, look, everyone's just pairing up their kickers with the quarterbacks. The new stack.
I love it.
Well, there was also a run on kickers because Steven took Tyler Bass. I couldn't be at the end of it.
Yeah. No, I get it. I've noticed whenever I've done these drafts, the real thing too, once someone starts with a kicker, everyone's like, oh, crap, let me go get a kicker.
Yeah.
They're good kicker strategies, but as a former coach, it's against my religion to take kickers. I just can't do it. Not anytime soon.
I think the big thing to remember is Sleeper versus MFL. For any folks out there who might be on MFL, you can start multiple kickers on MFL, and they start to get interesting because they're flex options, and based on the scoring with no negative points or anything, they tend to seem like they're going to fall in the wide receiver 30 to 50 range, which makes them extremely interesting flex options. But like Mike brought up, you can only start one kicker on Sleeper. So then you're looking for positional advantage. So once you feel like there's kind of been a fall off, then it kind of behooves you to wait on kicker because they're all going to kind of start scoring the same amount of points. But if you're the first and you get the best, it works out really well for you.
Yeah, and you do have to start a kicker in Sleeper, where MFL, you don't have to. If you don't want to play kicker all season, you don't have to. I recommend you try a kicker with the scoring, but not required. I know there's some people out there that's super anti-kicker, and I wish I was able to get Linda on because we all know she's the queen of kickers to explain all this. But she puts out great work, so make sure you check her out on Twitter because she's been tweeting about the difference of kicker scoring compared to other positions, and you will actually see, as Ryan said, that they are very comparable to wide receivers and running backs that are not that far down your list when it comes to scoring. So we are flying through the draft, which is what I wanted to do. And if you guys notice, I've not really recapped the draft because I'm just going to wait until we get to the end here, and then we can just talk about the different rounds and everyone's picks and how we feel about it. But so far, as you guys have been drafting, has anyone felt like they completely whiffed on a position that they missed a run going and they were not ready for it?
I wish I got a third running back. I'm a little pissed about that, to be honest with you.
right.
So that one bothered me. It's just that I took Kyle Pitts and I went for the upside there, and that threw off my build a little bit. Normally, that would have been another running back at that point, giving me the 3 that I'm used to. But I want to see how it fell.
Good auto pick with Komet.
You gotta love to see it. But yeah, I wanted to see how it fell, and I don't love my running back stable, so that's the one thing I kind of wish I invested on a little bit earlier.
And I kind of got thrown off because I wasn't prepared to take Garrett Wilson in the 3rd round. I was going to take a running back there, but when he slipped and obviously Joe auto picked Josh Jacobs, who I was going to take, I felt like the value was too good on Garrett Wilson. So and then I wanted to get my second quarterback with Aaron Rodgers, with the Daniel Jones hadn't been taken, and I saw that it's probably going to be another run. So I slept on running back until the 7th round, and not like I'm okay with those guys, but I don't have like one elite option that I feel comfortable with.
All right, and it is important to note, because of your starting 11 positions, no one's going to have a stacked team in theory after the draft. Now, we have seen some teams who just be monsters as we actually get into the season with some injuries and just some guys blowing up. I remember, didn't Cooper Kupp go in like the 5th or 6th round when he was a massive wide receiver one a couple years ago because he was coming off
a
the
universe winner?
Yeah,
pretty much.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, so we have some of those players where you don't feel great about your team and then they end up being stacked. So
right.
don't be concerned as you go into after your actual draft and be like, oh, my team is terrible. They might actually be okay, or your team could be terrible. I'm just trying to be optimistic, but no team is going to look amazing. It's just the nature of how this draft works out. So Kevin, I know we've talked about your running backs before, but I did notice. Let's see. You grabbed a few more. Let me pull it up. So you waited. Then you only have 2 running backs right now. Now, this is a deep draft that we're not going through all the picks, but is that a normal, I guess, strategy for you with these of just hammering? I'm assuming if we went 22 rounds, you'd be hammering running backs at the end.
Yeah, I'd probably have 6 or 7 late guys, because we've seen, obviously, with injuries and everything that can happen to the top end running backs. Like, I'm going to take probably Jerick McKinnon right here. Good points for there in the Kansas City offense, despite the fact he's 31 years old. But it's pretty ambiguous because Pacheco will likely miss the first half of training camp. But if this was going the full 22, I'd probably have 6 or 7, but at least a bunch of upside options. Like, I think Zach Charbonnet is a steal in the 10th round, just because I don't really believe in Kenneth Walker as far as, the receiving profile. And then if Zach Charbonnet can siphon off rushing work on top of that, I think he can just outright supplant him. But taking stabs that late on guys, I mean, Tony Pollard is a great anchor. If I can find consistent running back production in the later rounds, because there's so many guys right here, that he can fall into 140, 160, 180 carries. I mean, we're looking at 0.25 per carry. So those guys are, from like round 12 on, the best pick you can make is running back throughout the entirety of the draft.
I was going to ask a follow-up question with that, and this is for anybody. I know in years past with scoring, we've all kind of focused on receivers late as just kind of those boom-bust plays. But do you all feel like Kevin said, with this year, with the carries actually counting now, are you leaning towards those lottery, quote-unquote lottery ticket running backs and maybe those rookie running backs as well that fall late to try to help you as the season goes on?
Yeah, I mean, again, you fall into my favorite running back this year. I'm trying to get in every draft is Chase Brown of the Cincinnati Bengals. And I've literally, I think in all but one of my drafts I've done so far, mocks included, I've grabbed him because he's basically free and he could fall into that role. Joe Mixon right now, whether it's suspension, whether it's just ineffectiveness, you can look at stats across the board last year and how much they went down. He's somebody that could be one of those lottery tickets that falls into that type of work. There are a lot of rookies like Kendre Miller with the Saints, with Alvin Kamara's situation. And, so there are those guys out there, and, someone like Kevin, who does usually wait on running back, like that can definitely work. With these guys that are going to be available, obviously you need to have some things happen, but there's definitely been stranger things to have happened. And I think it's definitely not a bad strategy at all.
All right. So we are now wrapping up the draft. So we're actually going to review it. I don't know if we'll do round by round. We'll see how long it goes, but we flew through that. That was like a 30-minute mock, which is awesome. I love those kind of fast mocks. Nice. So let me pull it. I'm waiting for Steven to make the last pick. Maybe his phone died like his computer. All right. Well, that's fine. We'll scroll it up. All right. So the first round. So for those of you who are watching, if you can hop on YouTube, much better way for you guys to ask questions, comments. We can ask the guys any questions you guys have with maybe some of their picks, strategies, and all that fun stuff. But YouTube is the best way to go because Elon Musk didn't break Twitter with when it came to comments. He broke it another way, but he still hasn't fixed this. So we cannot get your comments from Twitter. So thank you. So we'll start with the first pick was Mahomes. Then I went Hurts, Allen, Kelsey, Burrow. I would say that's a pretty standard 5. We went Jefferson, McCaffrey, Jackson at 8, Herbert, Lawrence, Chase, and then Fields to round it out. So we went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 running quarterbacks, which feels pretty standard. The order may change. Did anybody feel like a pick jumped out at them, whether it was your pick or someone else's? But it felt pretty chalk to me.
Yeah, that's about how you could expect it. Like, I took Jefferson just because the Minnesota tax. More than likely, I'm not touching Jefferson at 106 because I'm not going to get a chance to being in Minneapolis. So I just wanted to see how the draft would go taking him at 106. More than likely, I'm taking, like, I love Lamar Jackson. I would take him at 106 more often than not. So
yeah, that's exactly what I was. That's what I was to say is McCaffrey and Jefferson going before the quarterbacks. Kevin, I was going to ask you about that. So.
Yeah.
Perfect. So then I would say the draft it gets weird once you get to the second round because that's when a lot more different strategies come into play. So it went Richardson, Kupp, Hill, Eckler, Andrews, Barkley, Watson, Bijan Robinson, not Brian Robinson, Prescott, AJ Brown, CeeDee Lamb, and then Hawkinson to end the second round. So we had 2 more tight ends go off. Do we feel like tight ends in the real thing, or do you go a little sooner? Because our next one, we'll get to it, was Pitts at the 404, none in the third round. With this tight end premium, is it still you just want those stud tight ends, or are you just trying to build your other positions first before you focus on tight end?
Tight end and quarterback will both go a lot faster than we see here. These are analyst drafts. People are getting creative. When the real thing comes and when there's actual skin in the game, you're not going to see these kind of risks. So the bulk of your first 3 rounds are going to be quarterbacks and tight ends, with save for the elite running backs and Jefferson and Kupp, possibly Chase. Like, I think those are the guys that really are going to jump into the first 3 rounds. But if you look at any mock you do, the biggest thing for anyone who's been in the Scott Fishbowl before will tell you, quarterbacks go faster. Do not trust the mocks. That is the one position that'll jump off the board. Mm-hmm. So I would say that, especially if you look at my mock draft, this will never happen. Tua will go in the second. Kyle Pitts will go in the second. I just took what came to me, but I don't see this playing out that way. So if you're thinking that you're looking at the mock ADPs and, I'm going to wait on quarterback, that will eventually cost you the Scott Fishbowl. I do fully believe that.
It's great advice on both on quarterback and tight end, because you snooze on either, you're going to feel pretty terrible if you miss the boat. That was the one thing I got in this draft as we got kind of to those middle rounds. I felt maybe I faded a little bit on tight end, knowing how strong it is here. There's guys like Kincaid and Dulcich and Laporta who I really like, and none of them fell in my lap like I hoped. So kudos to the guys who took them.
I think one of my biggest things I just caution people with tight end premium is, man, does it really help the tight ends at the top? But that does not mean you need to load up on the bad tight ends, because all it does is make them still the tight end 16 with not a lot of points. This scoring lends itself, if you want to get crazy like Mike did, to bully tight end. So Mike has arguably 2 top tight ends. Travis Kelce, who's the god of this scoring. By most projections, he's going to outscore the tight end 2 by 100 to 150 points, which is obscene, like literally league winning obscene. But then you get Kyle Pitts, and this is where tight end premium starts to matter, because this is dragging Kyle Pitts from arguably wide receiver 25 up to wide receiver 10. And now all of a sudden he's a disgustingly great flex option, whereas before he was just kind of a guy as your flex option. So just be careful about really reaching. In this league, let me be very clear, nobody did it. This league, everybody kind of let things fall to them. But as they said, you're going to see the run happen earlier. It's going to matter if you want one of the elite guys. But if you don't, just kind of set your line and be like, okay, well, now that it's down to just Evan Ingram, now that it's down to just Greg Dulcich, I better finally take my guy. Don't just come up and get a tight end. It's tight end premium can be a scary thing, but it doesn't do what a lot of people think it does.
Yeah,
I would say it makes.
Sorry, go ahead, Zach.
You go ahead, Mike.
I think to that end, like I was just looking over the draft board. As much as I hate Sam and he knows this, sorry, buddy, I hate your face and everything about you because you sniped me a few times. But looking at this board, to me, the pick that was the steal of the entire draft was Darren Waller. I don't see how he falls that far given his situation, given what he can do in a tight end premium. That's probably 2 rounds too late for Darren Waller, and it made me regret my Kyle Pitts choice because, just looking at it, I'm like, dang, someone got better value than me. I felt great. I was dancing with Pitts, and then I saw Wagner get even better value than I got. But those are really, to Ryan's point, that's where about the line is. I mean, we can drop it maybe to Freiermuth, but Waller to me is an insane value because of the volume he's going to see, and that volume is what's going to propel him really high up draft board. So that, to me, no offense to the rest of y'all, you did okay, I guess, but that was the pick of the draft by far for me.
That was a great call out. I'm just going to go through the third round real quick, and then we're not going to go round by round because nobody wants to listen to all that. But we can talk about picks. So it is a third round reversal. So that meant that the 112 got the 2-1 and the 3-1. So you had Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, Adams, Cousins, Geno Smith, Diggs, St. Brown, Chubb, Tua, Jacobs, that is Garrett Wilson, and then Ramondre Stevenson. So I did want to ask Ryan, we talked about it briefly earlier, but your first 3 picks were not a quarterback. How do you feel about getting Wilson at the end of the 4th? Do you feel like that was a good start? Because, I mean, you got Chase Cup, could be 2 of the best tight ends, and then Taylor could be one of the best running backs, especially with volume. So how do you feel about that start?
I don't hate it. In the mocks I've done, it's been Derek Carr, it's been Russell Wilson. These are the guys that I need to kind of go in accepting that I'm going to have if I want to try to get elite talent at these other positions. That seems to be the strategy I want to play around with. But again, it's going to be the players who fall to me there. If I'm on the clock and Justin Fields is there with my first pick, I'm taking Justin Fields. Like, it's a super flex. I understand what I need, but I wanted to see what it was going to look like. Obviously, we need to be afraid of Russell Wilson. I don't know that he's as bad as he was last year. He's not going to be as good as he was 2-3 years ago. So I'm hoping I just find that happy medium. And then I'm hoping, Matt Stafford comes back too. Clearly I'm the AARP quarterback ambassador with this draft, but I was kind of just looking for stacks. When I took Russell Wilson, I had a feeling Jerry Jeudy would probably go before I had a chance to make that connection, but I knew Cortland Sutton wouldn't. And I know later on I'm going to be the first one to take Tim Patrick because I love Tim Patrick. With Stroud, the 2 guys on my queue right now are Nico Collins and John Mechie. Actually, I think I ended up taking Nico Collins. And then with Stafford, I knew I got Kupp earlier. So this kind of fell the way I wanted it to fall. Whether it's going to work, I have absolutely no idea, because if Stafford goes down again, that's also probably likely to hurt Kupp. And if Russell Wilson's Russell Wilson again, then I wasted a pick at wide receiver. So there's a lot that could go wrong with this, but I don't hate the way it shook out, especially being able to back end it with David Montgomery a little bit later on.
Sure. And I'm going to talk about Casey's team in a second, but Ryan just said something. Would you guys kind of think of this kind of like underdog best ball, where you have to just assume you're picking the right players and you're building your team off of that, and you can't assume the worst because of how this tournament basically works out? You either are all in or you're not going to win anyway.
Yeah, take stands in your guys. Like if Watson goes down, if Watson's bad, Cleveland just runs the ball into the Stone Age. Like my team's, I'm sunk. I lost a 2nd round pick. So you just draft like you're right. That's probably the most important thing, because if you get, and you got to take stands on guys, and you can't just afford to wait around, especially with how sharp, analysts and, so a lot of the fans too. I mean, the great thing about these mocks is it kind of gives you that feeling of, what happens when this happens. You have to be fluid. You have to kind of roll with the punches. And it kind of gives you that exercise of, well, if this happens, I don't want to be stuck in my real draft. So I have to learn how to, find value elsewhere. Like you have to be fluid.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing to keep in mind. You're gonna feel like you're in a draft and you're playing against 11 other people. You're not. You're playing against over 3,000 people. Let's be honest. The year that I made the finals 2 years back, I literally didn't miss on my first 8 picks. They didn't get hurt. They didn't underperform. I could never do that again, but that's what it takes to get there. I'm not going to say it was even skill. Like those drafts come to you. But the only way we talk about there's a million ways to build a team. The only way to lose the Scott Fish Bowl is to play it safe. If you handcuff your own players, you already screwed up. You're done. Like don't bother, because at that point, all you're doing is devaluing one of your positions. You have to play. Not only that, Kevin has a great point that you're right, but also that your guys are going to stay healthy. That's your only way to win. You get hurt, your guys get hurt, forget about it, because there's going to be a team that looked like mine a couple of years ago that stayed perfect. You're not going to beat them with backups. It's just not going to happen. So all in, go bold, go big, be different. Don't draft against ADP, swing for the fences and get those ceiling guys. And then you can fill in with floor guys, rounds 14 and below if you have to. But assume that everyone's going to hit their ceiling and draft that way.
Love it. So I did want to call up Casey's team because other than Ryan, she waited the longest, it looks like, on quarterback, and she's the only one who did not take a quarterback other than Ryan within the first 2 picks. Everyone else grabbed one. So she went McCaffrey, Barkley, Diggs, Olave, and then got Derek Carr, Jordan Love. So she's not on the stream to talk about her strategy on this one, but how do you guys feel about that start? Double running back, then double wide receiver, and then double QB, how those players fell to? Would you guys be happy with that roster?
I don't like the QB she has. I like Love, but
it's a gamble that I think if those quarterbacks hit, she'll be in really good shape. But it is a gamble. But again, with a tournament with 3,000 plus people, if Jordan Love goes out there and ends up, people remember Aaron Rodgers' first year, like they didn't expect that he was all of a sudden be as good as he was, and there he was. So like Jordan Love could go out there and completely ball out, and then again that makes that pick look really good. But yeah, I'm with Doc. Normally I would try to at least draft one within my first 3 picks. I don't feel like I would want to go after the 3rd round and have not taken at least one by that point in this type of format. But again, she might take that strategy and win it all. Who knows?
Yeah, I think what bothered me wasn't the strategy. It's my personal feeling about the players. Like, let's just say, for example, that, and I was watching them fall until Ryan grabbed them. If it was Taylor, for example, instead of Diggs and or Pollard instead of Olave, I think I would have felt better about the strategy. And if I was Casey, I would have gone for, like, I think I got Murray in the 9th round. I would have grabbed him before I had a chance to hope to at least have a crack at an elite quarterback if he is maybe not as hurt as we're thinking. So it's not the strategy I don't like. I just think that there were teardrops on the players that made me think that it wouldn't have worked out the way that I wanted. And like I said, Kevin screwed up the 4th round pick for taking Pollard. If that was the pick over Olave, I would have felt better. If it was Devontae Adams or Jonathan Taylor instead of Diggs, I would have been okay with it. It was just the wide receivers that were taken with this scoring, I just don't think give you that advantage that you lost at quarterback. But if the right players fall, I absolutely would not hate just going big with the lead players and hoping for the best at quarterback. And that's my personal opinion. So when we talk about the team and the strategy, I just want to separate the two, because I think the strategy can work. I just don't think the players here were a big enough jump to take that hit at QB.
I would add too, if you are going to take that strategy and she takes Jordan Love, go all in. If you believe in that offense and you believe in Love, again, I'm just a big stacker. I think Watson got sniped before. Maybe she could have got him next, but maybe, Romeo Dobbs didn't go to 14-11. We're hearing good reports this offseason on him. So I would stack Love with some Green Bay targets. She does have Carr and Olave. Then, maybe later on in the draft, you get a Taysom Hill or Juwan Johnson, and you're going to be in, go all in.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I did, because I took 2 Pittsburgh receivers hoping that Kenny Pickett would make it back around. Obviously, he took Joe took him 3 picks ahead, but pivoting, being fluid, I took Zach Charbonnet right away to kind of play the week 17 to kind of get a piece of that game. So, yeah, because I think Pittsburgh is a very undervalued offense just in totality. Deontay Johnson's not going to score 0 touchdowns again. It's not going to happen. But, I think that Kenny Pickett in year 2 can certainly lift that offense.
Absolutely. So looking at the board, I didn't, other than obviously the QBs in the early as we expect, I didn't really see too many runs until looks like we get in the 7th round. There was a pretty good wide receiver run. And then it looked like tight ends, those last handful of rounds, let's see, 11 through 14, we had quite a bit of tight ends go off. Do you feel like that's going to be pretty expected in your drafts of seeing those wide receivers really start jumping out around round 6, round 7?
I think so, just because you're going to see quarterbacks and tight ends be so top heavy. And then I still think there's the natural fear of the fantasy community of waiting too long at running back. So wide receiver is one that can fall. And even in this draft where it was more balanced, look at the names of the guys there. You have Michael Pittman, who's the clear one. You have DeAndre Hopkins, who's probably going to be the one wherever he decides to sign. Chris Godwin in a PPR format is a guy you want. JSN, kind of a wild card, but should play out well. Judy, Tyler Lockett, Brandon Ayuk, and Christian Watson. These guys are ones on their damn team, and we're just letting them fall as late as they did. So it's a very interesting thing that even in this draft, where nobody really forced anything, the wide receiver names that late are still really good. And then, as everybody on the podcast has already said, quarterbacks and tight ends are going to go earlier, which is going to push more wide receivers further down the board. It's going to be a really interesting thing to see the talent that's going to be available. So I do think you'll continue to see runs there because there's just going to be names people can't pass up.
Yeah, I think Ryan, I think you touched upon it earlier, which is like draw your line of who's a player that you're comfortable with as the top in that position. And I can tell you that my line were the 2 guys that I took, Godwin and Marquise Brown, as guys that given their, given the role they have on the team, given what we've seen from them in the past, I was more than comfortable doing that. So when I was looking at Godwin with Dobbins on the board, I was like, well, I have Godwin and Brown still there. So I'm going to roll the dice that one of them is going to make it back to me. So I'll be comfortable with my wide receiver 1. The other guy is the one who went right next to Godwin was DeAndre Hopkins, who Ryan talked about, who I was comfortable with as my wide receiver 1, even sight unseen on his team. You just know what he is. So when we got to that, whatever it's the 6th round, it looks like there was enough left that you felt comfortable going another round. But once you started seeing Ayuk come off the board and Judy and Jigba, that was when it was like, okay, I've hit now my tolerance level and I'm going to go wide receiver. If that had been a running back run, I probably would have waited another round. Like that, just how you draft in these situations. But it was a situation where when I took the Dobbins pick, I knew there were about 7 wide receivers left on the board. I was confident having my wide receiver 1 and lucky to get 2 of them actually at that point.
As much as I adore Keenan Allen, seeing those guys available in the 7th and 8th round makes me regret that pick terribly, especially with a guy like Najee Harris and Travis Etienne, who I'm all on with the 2 picks I could have made there instead and just kept loading up at running back. So that really makes me feel like I made a mistake at wide receiver, seeing guys like that fall that much lower.
And then with the wide receivers too, I mean, once it hits to like the top 50, like when you start getting into the Zay Flowers, the Batemans, the Jujus, that area, like that is like the biggest tier break for any position. So for me, knowing that I can kind of MacGyver a running back room, for me, it was imperative to get, a big group of those wide receivers, 6 or 7. I mean, I kind of throw Elijah Moore in there and it helps that I had Watson too, but especially when you're starting 3 wide receivers and 2 flexes. So even on bye weeks, I still had that positional advantage at wide receiver. Not only that, I took Okonkwo and Dulcich, who, if what we're expecting out of, Okonkwo and Dulcich as upside options, if I could hit on just one of those guys, I'm very happy.
That makes sense. So we have about 5 minutes left. I want to get you guys out of here in an hour. I want to kind of talk about playoff strategy a little bit because we've talked so much about mock drafting, which is important, and just drafting in general. We've gone over a lot of different pick strategies, being flexible, being nimble, all that great advice. But at the end of the day, we're all trying to win the Scott Fish Bowl. I mean, I get it. It's all about charity. It's all about having fun. Absolutely. But if you're trying to win the Scott Fish Bowl, it really comes down to how the playoff structure is built. So I did want to go explain that. So it's 11 weeks of the regular season, and then half the teams are eliminated. And if you got at least 13 wins, which because we have median scoring, you're automatically in. And then it's just most points after that until we get half the field. So I had sent out a tweet earlier a few days ago because I was just playing around with the numbers, trying to see how everything fell. And basically 10% get cut. So it's 165 players get cut every week. So week 12, 13, 14 after each of those weeks. And then those are the bye weeks. So then we no longer have bye weeks. We end at week 15. After week 15, we cut, let's see, 48.5% of the field, give or take, depending on how Scott plays with the numbers. We go from 1155 to 594 teams left. So it's a significant cut after we get after the bye weeks. Week 16 is even worse. So we go from 594 all the way down to 33 teams. So 94.4% of the teams left are cut. So your final week 17 is about 33 teams. Again, Scott will play with the numbers. He gives an estimate, but it's significant. And I know we've talked about week 17 correlation, which is important, but I think it's also really important to look at your week 15 and 16 to really actually survive those cuts. So have you guys thought about that at all as we kind of transition out of the kind of the underdog best ball philosophies?
Nope.
I was going to say, I'm not smart enough to think that far ahead. I just want the best players. I've always been the type where I'm like, let me make the playoffs and then I'll worry about the playoffs. And I understand people way smarter than me say that's not the way to think. And they are probably right. I'm just not that smart, man. So I'll just take the players that are in front of me.
You need just the biggest confluence of factors to be able to navigate through that. And then, I'm happy just going weeks. I mean, I already have the week 17 memorized. I still remember last year's. Like, I'm going to forget how to ride a bike next year when I have to remember those week 17 schedules. But yeah, my 38-year-old brain only has the capacity to know week 17.
Plus, everything is different than how you think it's going to be before the season starts. Like, nothing plays out how it is on paper.
It's weekly chaos.
If you've done a survivor pool, you know that the NFL is unpredictable. So just to kind of focus week by week.
Yeah, Doc's probably right because, like, unlike underdog, where I love that strategy, you get multiple entries into underdog, so you can play it a few different ways. We got one shot here in Scott Fishbowl, so it is going to change.
That's a really good point. Like, it's easy to carry it over, but what a wonderful point! Like, you get as much as your bankroll allows you to do in underdog, but here you got your one shot. So.
Make it count. Go with your guys, right?
Yeah.
Basically just a single entry.
Yeah. I think I agree with all these guys.
My computer, I think I'm the one with the Wi-Fi issues.
Elon's taking over your Wi-Fi?
I guess so. He isn't even responding.
I
think we're losing Zach.
Zach's having a day, man. Twitter's down on him. Wi-Fi. I don't know.
Yeah.
Been booted from StreamYard.
Get the violins ready on the Titanic.
Zach doesn't know that we're talking smack about him.
Oh, I can hear you. You guys are just going in and out.
Oh, we can hear you now, too.
Am I good?
Yes.
You're good.
Yeah, we can hear you.
You're starting to sweat.
So
while you have internet,
I heard a lot of internet.
Oh, we lost it.
All right, this is awesome. We're almost done. So, do you guys? I wanted to ask real quick. Do you guys care about bye weeks? Because there is no bye week 12. We do have weeks 13 and 14 are the playoffs, but you get to keep your average weekly score added to your score in those weeks. Are you guys worried about bye weeks when it comes to playoffs? Like, I remember last year everyone was trying to avoid, like, the Colts, for example, because they're like, oh, I don't want Taylor being out week 14 right in the middle of playoffs. It didn't matter anyway. But any strategy along that, or are we just don't worry about bye weeks?
Well, I think you just hit a nail on the head. Is we were super worried about it last year, and then it didn't matter for a lot of the players we were worried about. So I feel like we spend so much time worrying about shit that's just not going to happen. Again, get your guys.
Yeah, I love playing against people who over-strategize. So please, if you're listening in the Boston
if you are
draft,
in the Boston league,
do that. Like, go big. I want, stacks on stacks. I want you worried about every bye week,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to care.
Take Evan Enger before Mike has a chance to this year.
Yeah, no. This year I'm figuring out who I'm going to screw Coop with. It won't be Evan this year, but yeah, trust me, he'll go home crying again. But no, I think that.
Well, I got to hear about it. So
you will. Well, we'll get you a live stream. But I think Zach told you where the cuts are. How it all plays out. Honestly, if you see people avoiding those players, grab them. Take the discount and run, because what they forget is that then you'll have 12 weeks of your starting team to add to that average before the bye week happens. And once those numbers are added in, you already have you're up front ahead of time if you're right about the guy. So get your guys. Don't get cute here. Just build a stacked team and hope it works out the way you expect it to.
Yeah, I may be speaking out of term here, but I think it's Adam Harstead at Football Guys, who is just one of the better fantasy minds I've ever had the chance to speak with. But I think it was him who said, my best draft strategy is take the best ADP available. If everyone else is avoiding a guy, take him, because he should probably be on a roster already, and it's going to work out well for you.
Love it. So with that, guys, we're at an hour now. I don't want to keep too much of your time. I appreciate everybody coming on. We'll make sure we get this out again. If I ever get out of Twitter jail, I'll even tweet about it. But it's been fun. We'll see if I have Wi-Fi tonight. But I appreciate everyone coming on here. Those who watched, good luck in Scott Fishbowl. For those of you who are drafting, whether you're in it or not, you can still donate. I put the link in the show description, but it's just at fantasycares.org. Great way to support everything. You can go buy a shirt still. I've been wearing my Scott Fishbowl 13 shirt this entire time. We got a couple shirts on. Look at all these shirts. So there's so much more ways you can have fun with this community, with this league, without even being in the league. There's even satellite drafts on Underdog where you can pay $5 and you can do up to 150 of them, and you can even earn your way into Scott Fishbowl for 14. So as much fun as we all had talking about drafting, mock drafting, all that, it's okay if you're not one of the 3,300 that are in this year. There's so many ways you can still be a part of it and also support the charity as well. So thank you, gentlemen, and then thank you to everyone who is also drafting with us that is not on screen. But I hope you all have a great night and enjoy your last week before we get into Scotch Fishbowl.
Good luck, everybody.